Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us for this week's episode. I'm quite excited. I've got a guest who is going to be talking to us about a topic that I think bothers a lot of people. But before I introduce the topic, if you're finding us for the first time on Change Conversations with Mbume, please follow us, subscribe, like, share, do whatever that people do on social media and rate us as well. We'll really appreciate that. So on the chair today, I've got Ashley, and Ashley will introduce herself and she'll tell us a little bit more about herself. Hi, Ashley.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well. It is cold here today, which I'm not really excited about, but besides that, it's sunny, so I'm doing well.
Where are you based? So
I'm based in New Jersey in the US. So it's our winter time right now.
It is, and we are getting into summer.
Yes, I would like that. I would much rather sunshine, nice weather than freezing and bundling up.
Oh, shame. It is what it is, though. You can't do anything about it, right?
No, I'll just pretend that the sun outside is like nice, beautiful rays and I'm in a tropical island.
Yeah, that's funny. So tell us a little bit more about yourself, Ashley.
So I am a mindset coach, a career strategist, an HR consultant, among many other things. And I strongly believe that women need to champion and empower other women, especially in the workplace, which is why I'm really excited to talk about our topic today. And I help women create their big dream life that they think that isn't attainable by using coaching, nervous system regulation, and strategies and tools to help them make that tangible for their day-to-day.
Oh, wow.
I'm also a mom of two. Sorry.
You're also a mom of two.
I'm also a mom of two, yes. So a toddler and a teenager who keep me very busy.
How is that going, the parenting?
It's always eventful, and sometimes maybe more stressful than work, vice versa. Who knows? It depends on the day.
I know the feeling. But yeah, we chose to be parents, right? So we need to deal other way.
Oh my gosh, they're the best. Let me be honest. They are the best. But some days I'm like, wait, like you just gave a response like I would have given as a grown up, right? And it gives you like, wait a second, you have to take a step back and you're like, okay, they are mine, right? They are part of me. So that is why they say things that I would say with an attitude that I would use.
Yeah, I know. That's funny. You said something, your nervous system. Just say that again.
Oh yeah. So nervous system regulation. So we could spend a whole time talking about that in itself, but essentially all of us are ingrained in like a trauma response, even though we don't even know what that might be. And so our nervous system has this way of almost like that feeling when it's just like jacked up, like you can't, like think about a time maybe that you were really excited and really happy for something and you feel like all of this stuff inside your body. So it's like that, but all the time. And we don't realize it sometimes in our day-to-day. So understanding how to check in with your mind-body connection and how to regulate that in the workplace, being a parent, in life, is like critical to helping you create massive change for yourself.
Yeah, I love that. And I've heard about it, and I've done a bit of work in meditation and stuff just to regulate the nervous system. And I think it's the best thing that anybody can do for themselves. But I just thought, because you mentioned it and our listeners or viewers it's something that somebody might consider. Because the premise of it is that we keep everything in our nervous system. And we need to find ways to regulate that part of it, right?
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be like, I was never the person who would meditate, or you would say, oh, like do some deep breathing. I would probably look at you like you were telling me something a little bit insane. And until I started to really embody it and understand it and feel it and see it, I was like, oh, now I get it, right? Like there's no right way. And I feel like sometimes people will like hinder trying to even start doing something like that because they think that they can't meditate, or they don't know how to do that, or I breathe every day without even thinking about it. Why do I need to deep breathe? Right. Like, and so all of those kind of preconceived thoughts keep us from even trying it. But when you try it and you embody it, massive, massive change happens.
No, I can speak to that, because the breath work element of really releasing what you're holding has done wonders for me. And I can, yeah. Anyway, as you say, it's another topic for another day.
Yes.
So a topic for today is all about surviving toxic environments. And that's where you really need to be able to regulate.
To do some deep breathing. Exactly.
So, Ashley, so just tell me a bit about what do we mean by toxic environments? What does that look like, and what do you mean by that?
So toxic work environments for me is really when you feel yourself shutting down, when you feel yourself just like being crushed on a day-to-day at work. Like your soul is dying a little bit inside every single day. And maybe something that used to bring you joy or you were really excited about, whether it was your career like topic itself, or maybe your colleagues or anything related to work, suddenly starts to just be like, that's not enough, right? Like something is here and I just like can't put my finger on it, but I know it's not right. And so it could be a mix of like micromanaging bosses. It could be an actual environment. So it could be the environment itself or culture, or a specific individual in the environment you're working in, and understanding what that looks like, because it's very easy to assume that you're in an environment that just, it is what it is, right? I'll just suck it up and just keep going until either A, somebody points out to you, like, that's not right. What are you doing there? Or you have a pivotal aha moment where you're like, oh, like this is toxic. Like I got to get out of here because this isn't doing anything good for my mental, emotional, or physical health.
Wow. So basically what you're saying is that toxic environments, they impact you either emotionally, psychologically, mentally, and there is an impact in some shape, way, or form.
Yes, exactly. And sometimes we don't even realize that that's happening. Or maybe we see one component, right? Like maybe you come home every day and you're kind of in a bad mood and grumpy, and your kids are like, what's the deal, right? Like you're always in a bad mood when you come home from work. But that compounds over time and could manifest into something else, like something that maybe your immune system gets run down and you get sick often, right? Like there's so many different layers. So even if you think about it from a subtle standpoint, there's always compounding effects.
Wow. And why is this topic important to you? Is there a story?
There's always a story, right? There's always a story. I think for me, it took me a long time to realize that delineation, right? Like versus maybe you're just having a bad day, right? Because we're all allowed bad days, right? Or is it every single day I am going to work, I'm giving my all, I'm doing my best, and I literally feel like someone is suffocating me, or I feel like I'm going above and beyond and I'm not getting noticed. I'm going above and beyond and I'm getting passed over for promotion. Every day I go in, I'm like, what's going to happen today? It might be a little bit crazy in here. Like it could be so many things. And I have had, I don't even know, too many environments to count. I'll just give you like a few snips of what those things could look like, right?
Yeah.
So one would be going into environment, super high energy, really fast paced in a recruiting industry, right? Where you're just like, it's very much go, go, go. Like you're supposed to be on the phone, you got to be selling things, you got to be selling candidates, you got to be selling clients. And it's very like hustle mentality, which is fine. However, if you have people who don't know that that's what they're getting into, right? And you have a boss or someone who runs a team who's very aggressive at those people, and they're just in your vicinity, right? It's not even directly to you, in your vicinity, right? Like screaming in their face, throwing things, like crazy behavior that you would be like in a movie, what is going on, right? Those kinds of things can start to infiltrate in how you feel on the day-to-day. Or maybe it's a boss who constantly micromanages, and every time you're like, oh, I can do that, they're like, well, send me that email first because I want to read it before you actually send it. Like they don't think that you're competent and capable enough to send a follow-up note, for example,
Mm,
right? And so
mm,
all of those things kind of compound. And then it really took a pivotal moment for me to figure out why, like when I started doing personal development work, like why am I equating my worth as a human being to my work? And staying in these situations and environments with these bosses where I'm going above and beyond and I'm trying to overprove and overachieve and overcommit to everything because
yeah.
that's going to make me feel worthy enough of X, Y, Z, whatever that might be, right? A promotion, a raise, being good enough, being smart enough, being competent enough, when it has nothing to do with it, right? You have to be able
Mm,
to divorce those two things.
wow. And does the toxic environment mainly happen with bosses, or it can happen with colleagues and subordinates?
Yeah, that's a great
Like,
question.
what's your view on that?
I think it can happen with anything, anyone and anything. So it could be your direct boss, right? It could be your boss's boss. It could be a colleague. It could be someone that you manage on your team who's just like constantly giving you hassle every day, no matter what you do. And you're just like at your wit's end because you don't know what else to do from here. It could be the entire organization, right? Because the culture could have been built over time in a way to perpetuate inequality, or it could perpetuate just kind of certain mindset characteristics and ways of thinking that are really difficult to change, right? So if you think of certain industries, for example, like accounting or like legal and insurance, any of those kind of typical male dominated industries, if you think about it like that, right? As a woman
Mhm.
coming in, you may be trying to continuously prove yourself, shift kind of the narrative, try to change the culture, do the things that you know are really important for people. But if your colleagues or your bosses or the leadership team of an organization don't see that value, they're just going to perpetuate what already exists versus trying to change something to make it better.
Yeah, I hear you. But can these environments be survived?
I mean, many of them still exist. So I think they can survive, but not forever, because I also think we're at a point where many people are at like an awakening moment where it's kind of like, especially given the past 2 years, right? COVID flipped everyone's life upside down, whether you were
Yeah.
directly impacted or not. Everyone's life has shifted in some capacity, right? And so I think the majority of people are not going to tolerate that kind of behavior anymore. They're not going to tolerate working for a place where they don't feel valued and respected and that their opinion is heard. They are not going to tolerate working for someone who belittles them, who is either like actually abusive to them in any way, right? Emotional, mental, physical, any of those things. Like that's absolutely not, no one is taking that anymore. I hope not. And if you
Mhm.
are, you need to come listen to this again. But um and I'm not making that as a joke, right? Like I fully understand the impact of abuse, but in the workplace, everyone has pushed to a point where they're evaluating like, why would I even stay in a situation like that? Nothing is worth that for me, right? I can go get a job somewhere else. I can go do something else. I can go start my own business. I can work for a different team. I can use my skills in another capacity that I don't have to feel stuck in this environment anymore. So
Yeah.
eventually I feel like it will shift.
But why do people stay though? Because if there's that sense of I'm not being appreciated, this space really gets me sick. I go home and I'm crying, and there's always something going on, even when I've done good work, but it's not seen all that. Like, from a psychological perspective, why do people still stay?
Oh, we could get into that a lot. But I think two things. I think one is people feel like they should be grateful for what they have. Like that's an ingrained belief, I think, across the world, regardless of your culture or background. It's almost like you should be grateful for what you have, right? You have a good job, you went to school, whatever it is, like that should be, keyword should be, enough for you. And
Mm,
like just settle
mm,
and be happy over there. And so it's very difficult for individuals to understand how to unpack that and what that really means. And that should is just a word that needs to be out of our vocabulary, number one. But two,
mm.
right? Like there is no should. You shouldn't have to tolerate anything. You choose to or you choose to not. And
Yeah.
then I think the second component to that is really not understanding like that that's even happening to them, right? Or that they're in this environment until maybe, they're out with you having a coffee, catching up, telling you, about work, and they say a story where you're like, wait, what? And then you get into a conversation, right? And you're the person that kind of sheds light to say, that's not right? Like you need to do something about that. Have you said anything about that? Have you had conversations about this situation? Like, what are you doing? Because that's not acceptable. And you shouldn't tolerate any of that. You deserve more than that. But sometimes people don't even realize that they're in the situation until someone helps to kind of shed some light on it.
And we just think it's normal. It is
Exactly.
what it is. So why should what can I do about it? Nothing. And it's okay.
And then it's
This is
okay.
what the culture is. That's the language that you hear. But this is the culture of this business, and it's not going to change.
Yes, exactly. But if you want to change, you have to be the change, right? So maybe that's you making a choice to say, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going to go over here where I'm appreciated, or I'm going to go start my own business, doing the same thing, using my same skills, and treat people the way that they would like to be treated, not how I think they should be treated.
Yeah. But I think, Ashley, the trick becomes as you decide to leave that environment, there's somebody else who's coming into that environment. You know what I mean? Like the
Yes.
cycle keeps going because somebody then gets your job and they come in and they stick around, right? And it raises the question whether is it an individual thing or is it the organization that becomes toxic to get to a point where maybe something has to change?
Yeah, I think it varies, right? I think it really depends on what the company is and their overall culture. And typically, if a company has a good culture, which could mean a variety of things, right? But good leadership, right? Where they listen to their people, they implement what their people are asking for, all of those pieces, typically they will not tolerate behavior that is toxic, right? Because eventually that will come to life and that individual will have to make their way out of their organization, typically is what they would do, right? But sometimes it doesn't, right? Or it goes on for years and years, and eventually it's like, 15 years later, and the brave person who's going to say something says something, and it's like, oh, no way, Joe Smith, that happened to him? I can't believe it, right? And they're like, everyone is shocked. But then everyone who's worked for this person is like, I'm not. Are you kidding me? What are we talking about? I'm so glad Ashley decided to say something. Right? So I think oftentimes companies themselves are really cognizant of those kind of blind spots and biases that they may have towards their own people, but also they might not. And then if they're not, those are normally the companies that eventually come to a downfall, right? Because they're just going to perpetuate that type of leadership, which no one is going to work there, and they will have a reputation, and that person who would have normally come in that revolving door is not coming anymore.
Yeah, no, I get you. That makes sense. Because I've always said, no matter how good the person is, if they're toxic or they've got a toxic behavior, I think you need to find a way as a leader to actually let them go.
Yes. And raise awareness, right? Some leaders don't realize that they're coming off kind of like a jerk because no one's told them. Right? So have an honest conversation, be really courageous in your conversation that you have, and take steps, right, to kind of bring that to life for that person, either as your boss, right? You can raise that conversation, or as a leader and you see it on your leadership team. But after that, like, to me, I give everyone some grace, right? So you get one shot. If I'm going to give you kind of an aha moment and raise your awareness, and then you are going to continue whatever the behavior may be and continue to treat people a certain way, like, then we're done.
Yeah. But in these behaviors, which ones would you say? So, because at the end of the day, the person needs to make a decision. They either stay or they leave, right? Like, so how do you have that conversation where I don't know whether they can tolerate and they can stay for whatever reason. Like, how can somebody get to that point? Because sometimes there's fear of I might not get the next job. What if I leave here? It could be worse out there. There's a lot of stories that we tell ourselves,
Oh,
and
yes.
fear might hold us back.
Yeah, and that's a great point, right? I think fear holds us back in almost every area of life, right? And so doing kind of your own due diligence for yourself to say, have I done what I could do in this position, right? Have I raised my concerns to the appropriate people? And maybe the appropriate people could be an HR person. It could be your boss if it's not your boss that's, raising this issue for you every day. It could be like an ethics hotline. It could be a variety of things, right? So have you done your part to raise this and see if you can offer any solutions so you can stay, if you're happy in every other aspect, right? If you still really enjoy your job and your team and all of those things. Have you done those things? If not, start there, right? If you have, is there an opportunity for you to move internally, right? So say maybe it's your boss or a specific person you're working with on a project. Is there an opportunity for you to explore moving internally to another team, doing something slightly different that still affords you the opportunity to keep your job security that you're worried about?
Yeah.
And lastly would be to make a plan, right? You don't just like want to wake up and say, you know what, that's it. Like, I'm done. I quit today. I can't take one more thing. Okay. Because that's like a rash decision, right? And then fear is going to sit in, and then all the stories that you just mentioned are going to pop up in our head, and we're going to be, going down a spiral. So once you have the moment where you realize that you are in a toxic situation and you want to leave, then you have to make a plan, right? So it's understanding, okay, where am I at currently in my career? Do I want to do something exactly the same? Do I want to look for a promotion? Do I want to do something, maybe take a step back, right? Like maybe I don't want to manage people anymore because that was a hassle I didn't want to deal with, right? Really evaluate where you're at and then make a tangible action plan. Give yourself around 3 to 6 months, depending on where you are in your career and what type of position you're looking for. 3 to 6 months, right? Make a plan. And when we think about making a plan, it's evaluating kind of where you're at, updating all of your stuff, right? Your resume, your LinkedIn, all of those things, and leveraging your network. Leveraging your network is the most important thing. If you can take one thing away from this, it's leverage your network always, regardless of toxic work environment or not, because that will allow you to start to map out what opportunities you have available, so you feel very secure when you make the change, even if it's scary.
Yeah. I think those are actually good points to really consider. But what if you decide to stay for whatever reason? So how can you then at that point in time decide how you can survive this place or this person or this thing?
Yeah. So I have a lot of feelings about this. I'm not going to lie. I think choosing to survive in a work environment, like, why are you choosing to survive there? Like, go thrive somewhere else, right? Stop tolerating things that make you feel like you have to survive there every day. Go where you want to go. But if you have to stay for a small amount of time, because I don't want to advocate for anyone staying for a long amount of time if they feel like they're surviving on the day-to-day at work, right? Yeah. Think about what you can do currently that you haven't already tried, right? So if you've already went to those channels, like go to those channels to raise your awareness and offer some solutions. Also, work around setting boundaries, right? So maybe you're just like so in your email that you're working, from 5 o'clock in the morning until 11 p.m. at night, and throughout everything that you're doing in your day to day, and you just feel like work has infiltrated. Well, no. Reset yourself some standard working hours. Most organizations have standard hours, even given this like flexible place that we're now all in, right? And that's what you work. You don't answer emails before, you don't take meetings before, you have a hard no. And setting the boundary and understanding what you will and will not do is really, really important. Also comes to projects, right? Like, you don't have to say yes to everything. So that's a different topic for another day, but think about that in conjunction with your boundaries. And then the last two pieces of advice I would say is, while creating your action plan on I don't want to use surviving, on staying for a while, right? Think about who at your current organization can be kind of your board of directors. Who can you go to for advice? Who can you go to when you just need to vent and say, like, this is BS and I'm over it right now, right? Like, I just need to talk to somebody about it. So do you have mentors? Do you have sponsors? Do you have coaches? Do you have peers? And think about how that network can really help you elevate yourself in this current situation. And then my last piece of advice would be to hire a coach to help you create a strategic exit plan. So you can manage not only what your thoughts and feelings are on the day-to-day, but also what your plan going forward is, because you don't want to be stuck in survival mode for the rest of your life.
Yeah. If you've got a boss, let's say it's your boss, because maybe with colleagues sometimes you can be able to maneuver things. But if it's your boss that is toxic, what is the best way to deal with that? Because this is the person you're reporting to. This is the person who decides what your pay raise looks like. This is also the person who decides on your bonus and all the other benefits, whether they do sign off on you taking leave or not taking leave. You know those things.
Yeah.
How do you then survive as in inverted commas, a toxic boss?
So I think 3 things. One, you need to divorce the idea that it's personal, even if it might be. Even if you think this person is out to get you and they don't have your best interests in mind, whatever those things are, you need to detach your feelings about that, because every day your interactions, you're just going to be all up in your feelings and not be able to be super clear in your communication. And clear communication is really important. Second, I would say you document everything. Document everything. And whether that means you're writing yourself an email at the end of the day with like whatever interactions happen, any of that stuff, any conversation you have with them via, Teams or Zoom or something, you follow up with a written email laying out everything that they said that they were going to do, that you said you were going to do. So everyone is very clear. That leaves no room for gray. And you can also work with your HR team, if you have one, or an ethics team or someone else, to see what other information you might want to keep kind of track of for yourself. And maybe it's a check-in call with them to also document the behavior and what's going on, so that you can't have any ramifications against you. I think that's really important.
Yeah, I think it is definitely important, because it becomes a matter of who said what, when, how, right?
Yes.
And everybody defending their part. And
Exactly.
if you don't have proof, then it's your word against their word. And usually it's very difficult. It becomes a very difficult thing to prove if you have not documented it, right?
Yes. So always follow up in an email. Any meeting agenda, anything, any interaction, you can just sending a quick recap. So we're aligned, this, right? You're setting a meeting to talk about your performance. You put it in the subject that's dated and timed in your Outlook or whatever other tool you're using for work, right? And my last piece of advice on that would be to manage your stakeholders around your boss. So maybe it's their colleagues and peers. Maybe it's their boss. You need to figure out a way to make a relationship with those people, because oftentimes they have some level of influence as well.
So it mustn't be always through your boss. You can have, if you are able to have direct conversation with those people and relationships.
Yeah. And if you can't, or you don't right now, right, think about that for next year, and think about like over the next year, right? Think about how can you initiate a conversation with your boss's boss, right? Or your boss's peer, depending on kind of what your level is from a leadership perspective. And it doesn't have to be to talk about them, but it could be a quarterly meeting or a biannual meeting, 2 meetings a year, where you're just kind of having a check-in, right? Telling them, oh, these are all the great things I've been able to do so far, right? It gives you an opportunity to share what you've accomplished and kind of your experiences in a way that they probably don't know. And also maybe you can ask for a piece of advice, right? You can ask for some guidance. You can ask for what's coming up over the next year that you think would be a really good opportunity for me to get into. That is how you leverage your network and get yourself surrounded by people who will have your back in the event that your boss doesn't.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I always say to people, make sure that your boss's boss knows what you're doing, because
Yes,
it mustn't end with just your boss. Your boss's boss and your boss's peers ideally need to know what you're doing if you want to get somewhere in a corporate work environment.
exactly. Yes.
Yeah. So what are the 3 things that you really want anybody to take out of our conversation today?
Okay. Number 1, stop surviving, because your happiness and fulfillment and your worth is not dependent on a job, and your level of success does not warrant being treated poorly in any environment. 2, if you feel stuck, if you feel burned out, you're just like over it every day, if you're surrounded by unmotivated colleagues and poor leadership, it is time for you to make a strategic exit plan. And my last piece of advice would be to know your worth and know that you can do hard things. You can do anything. And the fear and that kind of like, what do I, can I move? I don't know. I should just stay and just deal with this. I don't know what to do. Like, that's just your body and your mind trying to keep you safe, because that's what it's designed to do. But you can do hard things and you can make a change. And that uncomfortable feeling, you just have to navigate it for a little while, and then you'll be on the other side.
Those are good. No,
Well,
those are
thank you.
good, because they might seem daunting, but they are simple enough. I think it's the message that I'm taking out of that is, if you really believe you're in a toxic environment, or you've discovered that you are in a toxic environment, it's important for you to decide, what is the next thing? How do I get myself out of here? Do I want to get myself out of here? Because that's another question. If you're feeling that you don't want to, then you can stay. But I don't think you've got the right to complain, right? Because you've made a decision that you're staying.
Exactly. Everything is a choice. Everything. Even when you don't think it is, it's your choice.
Yeah. So I think that element of saying, if you're deciding to stay, it's fine. You've chosen to do that. But if you can feel that the environment is really not good for you, how do you then make a plan? And who are the right people that can support you in making that plan and making that work? And I think that point that you were making about, make sure you've got a strong network, because a strong network might open new doors for you to move into either another department or to move into another organization.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. You have to cultivate that. You never know what opportunities are available for you. So you need to ask for them, but you also need to look for them.
Thanks, Ashley. I actually enjoyed this conversation in a weird way, because it's a conversation where it's all like all ready, because some people have really suffered mentally from these spaces, and we might come across as if we are just being very blasé about it, but it can be a very daunting and emotional space to anybody find themselves in.
Yes, 1000%. And I've been there. I have been in those environments myself, right? So now I can look back with some levity, because life is too short to let it still consume me, right? But in that moment, you're so in it that you feel like there is no way out, and you don't even know what the first next step is. And sometimes it's like just a baby step, like take one small baby step at a time. And that could mean shutting off your laptop at the end of the day and not checking it till tomorrow.
Yeah, small things like that. And making sure that you're finding ways to protect your own self and your own mental state.
Yes.
Thank you. Where do people find you on social media?
You can find me on Instagram or Facebook at Ashley Marie Coaching, or on LinkedIn at Ashley Marie Fernandez, Career Coach.
Thanks, Ashley. It was
you.
really great talking to you. And I really hope somebody can take something out of this and they can make a difference in their lives. Instead of surviving the toxic environment, they decide to take themselves away out of that space and really find the courage within themselves to be able to bet on themselves and take themselves away out of that environment that they might be finding themselves in.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really grateful for you, and grateful to have this conversation in this space.
Thank you. So for anybody who is listening to us, please share, comment, and let us know what you think of these conversations that we're having. We will see you next time in our next episode. Thanks, guys.